Redditors who had sex with someone from a completely different culture, what is your funniest and weirdest story? I like to think I'm a good kisser. Had a compliment here and there. And one time I was making out with this Chinese guy whose English I thought was pretty great, but he breaks off in the middle of kissing and just says, "You're so hardy, hardier than a peach," and goes right back to making out again. Hey, I'll take it, whatever the fuck he meant. Had pretty wild sex with a Mexican girl I met in Berlin. She was staying in the same hotel as me and we hit it off. On the night we'd both had quite a few drinks and she was very much the instigator of the intercourse. I woke up and had bite marks and scratches on my body. She woke up and said, "I have to go to church right now. Thank you for the orgasm. Please leave." We both got dressed in silence and I went back to my room. I saw her later that day and she ignored me. Then later that night, there was a knock at my door. She used me twice and bailed on me to go to church both times. This is just cute. A Russian girl said she liked my bumps. She was groping me at the time, so I realized she meant bum. I had to explain to her the difference between a butt bum and a bump. She still called her backside her bums though. When I told her it was singular, she pointed out that she has 2 boobs and 2 bumps. I couldn't argue with that. The first time I had sex with a Japanese lady, I woke up with my underwear and the rest of my clothes neatly folded at the foot of my bed, rather than strewn and abandoned across the floor as I had left them. Apparently she woke up in the middle of the night and felt the need to do that, and I thank her for that. Edit. Thanks for the gold! So, I was in the Philippines and was staying with my cousins. I'm half Pinoy, grew up in the US, in this little village. I met this pretty girl a few houses down and we started talking. Nothing happened. The next day, a local friend and I went to a club, or what the Pinoy call the disco, about 15 minutes away. I met this girl there again. Again, we started talking, and when we were all partied out and drunk, we shared a taxi back to the village. She invited me to her place, we played Jenga and had a little sex. Now here's the weird part. A couple weeks later, I found out that she was my cousin. Turns out my grandpa got around with half the village in his day. I lost my virginity to my cousin. Had a one-night stand with a Japanese girl I met at a bar. We went back to her place and were pretty loud. Great sex. But I go downstairs to leave in the morning and her whole family is there having breakfast. Turns out she still lived with her parents and siblings. It was so awkward. I couldn't speak Japanese, so I just slipped past them out the door. I briefly dated a woman from Honduras who would transition from English to Spanish, CCC, as she reached orgasm. Which wouldn't be notable except that when she wasn't having sex, she frequently talked about how much she hated the Spanish language and had no use for it. Well, you have one use for it. Japanese girl wouldn't allow me to go down on her because she thought it was a dirty act. She then proceeded to go down on me and even licked my asshole of her own accord. It is pretty hairy back there, BDW, so don't really understand the logic there. Edit. Info update. We had sex, so I did see her flower, and it was absolutely fine. No excessive flesh as many have speculated. Also no bad smells or crazy bush. She wasn't playing coy for cultural reasons, as suggested. She was adamant that she hated it. Maybe she'd had bad experiences in the past? Too bad for her, I would have put in a good stint. Edit. Typo. I in no way think this is a cultural thing, but I had oral sex with an Indian girl then slept overnight with her. And she ended up giving me like 6 hand jobs while she was still sleeping. I'd wake up with her jerking me off, nuzzling her face into my beard, like trying to put her face onto mine. And it was magical. Almost died at work next morning. Kind of sad really, but I was working in Senegal and hooked up with the girl I worked with. Clothes started coming off and in broken English she goes, "Do you have something?" I thought she meant a condom, so I'm like, "Yeah, I do." She pushes me away, says she has to go, gets dressed and leaves. It seriously took me months to realize she probably meant, "Do you have any STDs?" Such a shame. We both wanted safe sex, but it got lost in translation, as me being an idiot. Oh, I'm late to the party. I was in the Philippines, asked a girl out in a date. She agreed, and we end up having sex. I wake up the next morning, she is getting dresses and says I owe her money for the sex. I told her hell no, and she pulls a knife, and then I realized I do owe her money. Edit. I was freaked out. I just gave her everything I had. The scary part was after I gave her everything, she didn't move from in front of the door, so I grabbed her purse on the bed and threw it out the window. When she ran to the window, I ran like Forrest Gump. I hooked up with a beautiful Brazilian girl when she was visiting our country. She was there to learn English, so her English was fairly poor. Our date consisted of funny, awkward moments and lots of Google Translate. Anyways, so with me living with parents at the time, I thought it'd be nice to bring her to the mountains to see the city view at night. It was dark and quiet with no one around, so we got down to business. With me trying to be a generous guy, I went to go down on her, but she stopped me, maybe twice. I didn't think much of it and made love under the moonlight. During this all, I was pleasantly surprised how wet she felt. Once we were done, I offered to go down again. I wasn't sure if she had finished. And she said no and tried explaining something in Portuguese. I gave her my phone for the translate and she said, "I'm unwell." She didn't seem unwell, so I had a look at what she wrote and it was something like menstruada. That's a complete guess. I point the phone down and see blood everywhere. Definitely worth the cleanup the next morning, but I found it crazy that it didn't seem like an issue whatsoever when it came to sex. She didn't seem embarrassed or at all fazed at not discussing it beforehand. I've no clue if it was a cultural thing or personal. Can't wait for her next visit. As things were getting started, he leaned in close to me and said in English, not his native tongue, I think it's maybe not very polite to say and maybe weird, but I want to fuck your brains out. That's a thing people say, right? Afterward, I reported that he had in fact managed to fuck my brains out, which he seemed happy with. Bonus story. While trying to woo me earlier, he looked up at the moon and said it'd be cool to travel there. I agreed, and he asked, "So is that on your Craigslist?" Makes me laugh every time I remember it. An American friend of mine was a student in Japan and got a Japanese girlfriend. The first time they had sex, she whimpered and cowered and kept telling him to stop and that it hurt, so he stopped, of course, and apologized for hurting her. She looked at him quizzically and was like, "Why did you stop?" Apparently, it's normal for women in Japan to pretend that the man is hurting, forcing her. It's considered complimentary, similar to telling a guy he's got a big dick or something. Ugh, so creepy. First off, she was curious about my penis because it did not look right. I was a 20-year-old American at the time who had just gotten naked in front of a Czech coworker who wanted to pay me back for teaching her class for a week. She gets naked. I tell her she looks gorgeous. I get naked. She immediately wonders aloud on why my penis looks like a hose. I figured it out later when I realized that she must have only seen uncut dongs before, and I was the first cut dong she had ever seen. Either that or my shit's all fucked up. Who knows? So, several minutes after she says that my genitalia is odd-looking, we start getting at it. I spend a good 20 minutes sniffing the roses at Busch Gardens, and she's putty. She tells me she wants my strange cock inside of her. Alright. Of course, before I can do so, she says, "I want to do the bunny." Okay, what is the bunny? She gets on all fours, presents her ass to me by waving it in my face, and says, "This is the bunny." I shake my head. I correct her. "No, that is doggy style." She shakes her head, barely visible behind her giant ass, and she replies, "No, this is the boonie." I saddle up behind her, ready my cock, and say, "I'm pretty sure this is called doggy style." Turns out you can have an argument about the proper name of a sex position while also having sex in said sex position. Which, on one hand, was great, because I lasted forever and I came like a hydrant. Other hand, she got pregnant and ended up with some guy and now she has a few kids. So, I guess she won that one. The bunny, it is. I'm a Scottish guy and I had a thing with a Malaysian girl who was studying at my university for a year. After she had given me a blowjob for the first time, I started moving towards eating her out. She was completely confused at this point and didn't understand what I was doing. When I explained I was returning the favor, she flat out told me it was impossible for a guy to give a girl a blowjob. I explained what I was trying to do, but she couldn't grasp the concept at all as she had never received oral sex. After some explaining, she let me try it and instantly became a huge fan. My jaw still aches with fondness remembering that year. Edit. This blew up overnight. To answer some of the questions, she was a Malay girl who was studying abroad for her final year of uni. I met her as she was doing the same course as me. I got the impression she was very reserved back in Malaysia but wanted to go a bit wild when she came to Scotland. She wasn't a virgin when I met her, which is why I found it odd she wasn't aware of the concept of receiving oral sex. We had a lot of fun that year, but sadly she moved back home and that was that. I had a holiday fling several years ago with a Turkish girl. Holy shit, did the locals not like it when you bang their women, yet have no problem trying to nail every drunk Western tourist in the resort. Lots of shouted abuse when walking down the street and hanging out, and a couple of places off the beaten track I most def wasn't welcome. But totally worth it. She was a masseuse and boy did she know how to use her hands. A lot of interesting stories. Not sure if this is necessarily cultural, but my first was from Mexico. And she was pretty aggressive. Like lip biting, scratches on the back and arm, neck biting, aggressive. I was already kind of nervous given that it was my first time and it kind of spooked me. But we liked each other a lot, so we did end up sleeping together regularly. My ex-fiancé was Korean. Even though I'm Korean American, my parents raised me in a very Americanized household, so most aspects of Korean culture I was unfamiliar with prior to living in Korea. Anyhow, in Korean culture, group dates or meeting isn't uncommon, and it's less awkward than a sogating or blind date. Usually in a group date, it isn't uncommon to get plastered, and a little touchy-feely with the person you'd like. No one gets left out since it's always a 1-to-1 guy-girl ratio and everyone there is supposed to be single. Sometimes a girl will fake being too drunk and ask the guy she likes to take her home in order for there to be an excuse for them to split. Ex-fiancé did that with me, and I had no idea what was going on until we got in the taxi and she started kissing me. We didn't waste any time getting back to my place because we were both horny and a little drunk that night. We forgot to use a condom. She later said, "Let's just do it again since I'm getting the morning after pill anyways." Since there isn't much education on contraception, she didn't understand the ramifications of just popping Plan B all the time, but she eventually got on the pill because she thought condoms were a waste of time. Was banging a Persian girl for a while? When we would get sweaty from sexing, I swore she smelled like lawnmower exhaust. It had that oil burning with gas mixture kind of smell. I think it may have been from her diet. Now, whenever the neighbors are mowing the lawn, I get a massive erection. I wish that last part weren't true. Fuck you, Pavlov. Subscribe to our channel and don't forget to hit the bell so you don't miss new and the coolest stories from all over Reddit in the future. See you next time.